Hey team, welcome to Conquering Limits. Today we're going to be going through marathon nutrition, also known as fueling your run. So we've got a team listening here that is going to be doing their first, third, fourth marathon. So we've got a lot of knowledge, a lot of experience on the course today. Let's dive in. First, introducing who I am behind the screen, who you hear chatting. My name's Coach D, also known as Danielle. I ran my first marathon back in 2012, and I really haven't looked back. I went from never running to running a marathon. People ask me all the time, how did you do it? And I said, I was 22 and dumb. And you can do a lot of things when you're 22. Do not recommend it now looking back. Since then, I've run Marine Corps 3 times. I've run 20 marathons. And my personal best at Marine Corps is a 412. I paced a friend to a 556. So I've seen everything from, that 4 hour finishing pack all the way to the backup pack with the sweepers. I've experienced it all. I know what the course is like. I know they have changed it a little bit since I last ran it in 2019. But those changes are very small and minute. This year is a little bit different for the Marine Corps Marathon specifically. We're going to have a special call on that where we talk through the race course. So don't worry about today. Today is just about nutrition. I've coached hundreds of athletes to finish lines, anything from it's actually now a 2:41 is our team PR marathon up to 7 hours plus. And as I always remind my athletes, your pace does not define you. We all covered the same 26.2 miles, but we need to be having our time and our finish time in consideration for our fueling strategies. I own Run with Coach D. I'm a full time personal trainer and I specialize in running and endurance training. I'm based here in Arlington, Virginia. One of our other teammates is Coach Cody. He taught last month's seminar on strength training. So he's also a runner, 3-time Boston qualifier. He's our 241 team marathoner. He has qualified for two 70.3 world championships. He's actually on his way to Marbella, Spain in November to compete in that race. He'll be also competing in the Chicago Marathon this October. He's a high school cross country coach, and he exclusively works with all of our youth athletes. He's also the head strength coach, manages our Get Strong, Finish Strong app, and also develops all the strength trainings for all of our athletes. All right, so let's get diving into this. As most of you know, as an amateur or an intermediate, which is most of us here, runner, understanding nutrition is essential for optimal performance and success during training and on race day. Today, we're going to delve into the common issues that are face you guys, which are how much carbohydrate intake and our GI strength, and how we can provide practical recommendations to help you fuel your body effectively. As most of you know, there are some common issues that we would encounter during a marathon. One of those issues is going to be energy. Are you going to have enough of it? That's normally what most people think. They don't think, oh my gosh, I have too much energy for this 26.2 miles. So, fueling inadequately can lead to a depletion of energy levels affecting your overall performance. No duh. Right? So, we're going to address that today. Second issue that we encounter a lot during a marathon is GI problems. Gastrointestinal issues can be, if not managed, can significantly disrupt your run and cause discomfort. If you've gotten this far in training and you haven't had a GI problem, you are very, very lucky. On my long run this past weekend, we stopped 2 or 3 times, and one of them involved having to buy a Coke because our stomachs were just not having it, and we needed something to help settle our stomachs. So, fun fact: Coke can help you with that. The carbonation can settle your stomach, and the sugar can help provide a little bit of a rush of energy. So, you will have GI problems if you don't plan for it. If you do have them, that's a quick tip how to fight through it. And the last part is hydration. Huge concern, especially if you live here in the DMV. We have very I wouldn't even say temperate, but very wild weather come October. You never know what you're going to get this fall. And we might have an 80-degree day. We might have a 45-degree day. So making sure you manage your hydration, so your sodium, is crucial for your peak marathon performance and your overall health. So we're going to dive into some of these issues and how we can avoid them. First question I always want to start this off with is, why are carbs so important, right? We know that not all carbs are treated equally. There are different, oops, apologies, my screen just flipped over. There we go. There are many different types of carbs that we can choose from, but the reason that we want carbs, we all heard, and you probably have seen on social media at this point, you have read some type of literature that talks about glycogen. Glycogen derives from the carb, right? That is going to be our energy source. Our body stores it in our liver, and then that is how we're able to extract it and utilize it when we go into these aerobic events. That is a super simplified explanation of how the glycogen process works. But one thing we want is what we call high oxidation efficiency. This is a measure of the muscle's maximum capacity to use oxygen in microliters of oxygen consumed per gram of muscle per hour. The higher the oxidative capacity is, the healthier the muscle is. AKA, the more carbs you can provide, the healthier the muscle is going to be. The more you practice it, the more efficient the body is going to be at it. And the goal is when you're intaking carbs during the marathon, they are not going for storage, they are going for immediate use, which is why we want to use insoluble or soluble carbs versus insoluble carbs, right? We don't want to be using beans and legumes on the marathon because those are insoluble. They're going to take your body forever to process and they won't be quick action. Instead, we want some really simple carbs, soluble, sugar, things like that. When we're looking at the ingredients for our carbs that we want on the run, we're going to be reaching for things made of glucose or maltodextrin and fructose. Studies have shown that these two sources together can have a positive impact on performances longer than 2.5 hours. Most of us on this call are going to be on the marathon course for longer than 2.5 hours. Some things we want to stay away from. What's great for you is these products don't typically have these sugar compounds. This is more if you're traveling internationally or if you're using non traditional running fuel. So we want to stay from galactose. I'm going to pronounce all these wrong. Isomaltulose, gonna even leave that one alone. But these are the three we don't even want to touch. They can lead to extreme GI distress. And like I said, they are typically found internationally and or in non-traditional running fuel. So if you're not using gels, you're not using powders specifically formulated for endurance training, this is where you might encounter them. All right, before we even dive into getting to race day, we need to talk about the couple of days that lead up. And I'm sure you've heard carb loading. You're like, Coach D, got that. Everyone talks to me about carb loading. And you know it should be 2 to 3 days before your race, right? It's not the night before. I actually get really frustrated with all these races that are like spaghetti dinner and like huge pasta dinner the night before. By the time you get to the night before your race, it should be just a little more than what you're used to eating. So really our carb loading starts 2 to 3 days before race day, gradually increases over those 2 to 3 days until you're getting about 7 to 10 grams per of carbs per kilogram of body weight to fully top off your glycogen stores. So take your body weight, divide it in half, multiply by 7 to 2. That's going to give you a give or take of what your body is going to need in those days. There's also a great, she's a running dietitian. Her name is Featherstone Nutrition on her website, and I'll include this in my follow up email. She does have a carb loading calculator that helps to give you a generalized idea of how many carbs you should be taking and how many days you need to be carb loading. For the marathon, it is typically 2 to 3 days. You could probably get away with two if you have trained in the, depending on your training level, what you've been doing in the past. But most of us, it's 2 to 3. If we are traveling the days before a marathon, we really want to stay tuned to this. If we're flying by plane, we want to really be paying attention to our hydration. I always remind my athletes, always have snacks on you and have things that are easy to digest. So when you're traveling, can you bring something? It sounds silly, but like just pieces of bread, a bagel, pretzels, something you can snack on throughout the day to hit those carb goals in your carb loading period. We want to also stay away from anything that's super high in fiber. I'm not telling you to cut out your vegetables totally, but we want to start reducing fiber. We want to have the body working less as we prepare for this really big event. So just slowly reducing your fiber. Not telling you none, but just slowly reducing it. And then last but not least, don't overeat and do it all in one sitting. Spread your carbs out throughout the day, snacks instead of having that one big meal, like I mentioned with the spaghetti dinner. We don't want to have one just giant meal. So have it throughout the day. Another principle that I tell my clients is just add a little more. If you're used to eating a bagel in the morning for breakfast, eat a bagel and a half. If you're used to having a banana as a snack, eat 2 bananas. I know it sounds crazy, but don't go searching for new foods and trying to find the hack of something that's going to have the highest amount of carbs for you. So it's just this concept of eat a little more. Moving into pre-race nutrition. So this is the night before, the 3 days before you have been crushing your game. When you're getting to the pre-race, the couple hours before your race, Hopefully, by now, you have practiced what foods your body agrees with. If you haven't, good news is it's currently the beginning of September. You have a couple more long runs to practice your pre run nutrition. So, what does that look like? Maybe it's an hour before you start running. You're going to try to have 100 to 200 grams of carbs. Why is it such a generalized number? Because we're all different and we all digest foods differently. So, the thing with nutrition that everybody really dislikes, just like with training, the answer is 99% of the time, it depends. You notice that carbohydrate range on the previous slide was 7 to 10. That's a big difference when you do the math on it. Same here, it's 100 to 200 grams. What makes the most sense for you? So, really narrowing it down, practicing. I have a client right now. We started back in July playing with his pre run nutrition, and we've been adding a piece of bread here. We've been adding a half a banana there so he can see how his body responds and so that he doesn't give himself GI distress the race morning or his final long run morning when he does his race day simulation to kind of test everything out. So make sure now that you are using this time. And you can include, I use this picture specifically because I did like how it has the carbs, a little bit of fat. Almonds might be a little much for most of us, but a little bit of peanut butter. That's nothing wrong with that. It does not have to be straight carbs, but it should be a primarily carb heavy meal. Before the race, I do want you also to take in a little bit more nutrition. When we get to race day strategy, we're going to talk about a timeline. When should I take this? When should I take an extra gel? Should I eat before I go? Let's talk about what time are you getting there and then backtrack it. So 10 minutes before the race starts, you do want to make sure you are fully fueled. This could be a gel, this could be a banana, this could be a honey stinger waffle, I don't know, pretzels, whatever it be, whatever you're practicing with, something about 15, 10 minutes before, just to kind of top off that extra energy storage, but also have something that's quickly available in your gut. Like I mentioned, this may change depending on your race start time. So if you are running a Chicago marathon, that's a 7, 8 a.m. start. New York City marathon, that's going to be up to an 11 a.m. start. Marine Corps, we're at 7:20, so a little different this year. So really depending on if you're waking up at 4 o'clock in the morning, you're going to require more calories than someone waking up at 6 a.m. for that same 7:20 start time. So those are some things you're going to keep into play and then practice before you get to race day. Examples of that 100 to 200 grams foods: oatmeals, bagels, toast. We want to keep them simple carbs, right? So this is where we don't want to be taking in anything that's super complex. We don't want to be taking in something that's going to cause our body steak and eggs. We don't want that. That's going to be something that's going to cause our body to work too hard, but also not provide us with that immediate nutrition. So that's some stuff you can look at before you go. And like I said, I had the picture of an oatmeal. I specifically chose that. It's going to be a little slower digesting, but still faster digesting than something high fiber or high fat or high protein. A couple common mistakes that we want to avoid on race day. Let's not use the philosophy of on a whim. "Ugh, I'll just use what's on the course. They chose those items for a reason at those times, so I'll just trust that the race is going to have everything." No, do not trust that the race is going to have what you're going to need for race day. If you are taking in what's on the course, it's because something probably went south. Unless you are, maybe that 2:30 to 3 hour marathoner, you might be able to get away with it, provided your stomach is pretty full of iron and you can kind of handle it. Most of us are going to bring our own. This is an example of where I like to talk about borrow from the pros. You don't see the pros just taking the on course nutrition. Yes, I know most of the pros are sponsored and they have to use certain fuel, blah, 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 blah. But many pros are not, and they are utilizing their own fuel that they have practiced. They have their own bottles, they have their own timing of when they want what bottles. And so you can do that too. We're not racing Berlin, which really cool fun fact, Berlin, you can actually have your own bottle drop. Marine Corps does not allow that. Other majors do not. So you will have to prepare your own nutrition. Do not expect the course to provide everything you need to finish 26.2 miles. Second mistake to avoid: don't just try to follow the crowd. I see this all the time. Well, my friend does this one, so I'm going to use this gel. Does it work for you? Maybe it's a great way to start experimenting with things, but I have tons of friends that none of us use the same fuel. We all have something different. So don't just follow the crowd or follow what, my last tip here is new is better. Don't just try a new gel because your favorite runner is using it. Maybe you want to test it, but you don't have to use that one. There's no such thing as the best fuel. It's the best for you. So if there's a marketing tactic out there and they're telling you this is how you're going to get to the best marathon of your life, It's probably just a marketing play. Most of us probably don't need it. But what is optimal? So those are the things I want you to avoid. Here is a quick overview of your optimal carbohydrate intake based on the amount of hours it's going to take you to complete the marathon or any other racing endurance distance. So if you're running for only an hour to 2 hours, let's say those early long runs. Remember those long runs you used to do back in like June or July? You might have only needed 30 to 60 grams of carbs per hour for that run. That's about a gel and a half per hour. As your runs got longer, you probably want to start increasing that. If you haven't, now is the time to start playing with that. So, something I want you to do after this call is to go back and look at your nutrition, write it down, break it down. How many gels am I taking an hour? How many gels am I taking total? Does that math out? And maybe 60 grams is a really aggressive jump for you to go from 30, maybe you're only doing 20. Maybe that's really aggressive. So instead of just jumping up because Coach D said that this is the optimal number and I need to do it, let's be smart about it and say, well, if I'm only doing 20, why would I jump to 60? Let me jump to 30 and then I'll go to 40 because our GI system does need to catch up with the rest of our system. Just like our legs are a muscle, our heart is a muscle, our stomach, we can train it like a muscle and give it over time. When I think back to my original marathons, when I first started back in 2012, I think I took like 2 gels over like a four. I think my first marathon was like 4:46. I think I took 2 gels. I am still to this day unsure how I finished that marathon. Probably just adrenaline and again, being 22. But I think back and I'm like, "Oh my gosh, I should have taken like 2 to 3 gels an hour for that race." But if you had asked me to do that then, there was no possible way because my gut could not handle that level of exertion and trying to process food. So please do not expect your body to jump up, especially for these over 3 hours. Some of you might be a 4, 5, 6 hour marathoner and go, 90 grams an hour? What? I get it. Don't try to jump up to that. I do have some pictures later on. They'll kind of show you what this could look like because we're not just going to take it in one type of fuel. So just take this as a starting point and then lower and increase depending on your body. Scientists have been studying in cyclists using carbs in the stationary setting up to 120 grams an hour. So there really is no limit. And that's basically what a lot of the science has said is there's no limit to how many carbs we can take in an hour. The limitation is our own physiology, it's our own bodies. And that's why some of you might be able to take in 60 grams an hour while others can only take in 30. Why some of us need to use all gels, some of us need to use liquid nutrition. And let's look at that then. Of this is a great visual from My Sports Science. They're a UK-based scientific research company, and they host tons of trainings. If you ever want to learn something, they usually do great webinars. This is from one of their trainings that really broke down what I liked, a visual of seeing how to use different carb sources over the duration of your marathon. So starting on the far left, those blue lines there, that's going to be like your 5Ks. Think about a 5K. You really don't need fuel. You can use it, but small amounts or a mouth rinse. I love talking about the mouth rinse. That's a great way to trick your body into thinking it's getting carbs without giving you the GI distress. It's also a great trick for the end of a marathon. Maybe it's not your day, things aren't going well, and you're just a little nauseous, but you know you need something. Mouth rinse. Take your Gatorade, take the Powerade or the nutrition that you have, swish it around in your mouth, spit it out, and your body will be tricked into thinking it got some carbs, and you'll be able to have a little bit of a better period until you get to that next aid station, or hopefully maybe you'll start to turn a corner. As our runtime increases, you'll notice that we need, they call it multiple transportable carbohydrates. That is just fancy talk for different types of sugar. Simplified terms, you just got to take it in different ways. So as our runtime increases, you'll notice that our intake of carbohydrates also increases. And then that spot between 2.5 to 3 hours is really when we want to start paying attention to where we're getting all these carb sources from. So we want to look at combining sources like glucose, fructose, or sucrose for these times. We don't want to include those no-nos that I said, that the one I can't pronounce. We don't want to include those. We want to be combining glucose and fructose. So taking your moment to, look at your gels that you have and what's the primary sugar? Maybe there's a gel that doesn't agree with you. Take a look. What's the primary sugar? Maybe that's a sugar that you avoid. Because some people will say, like, oh, I don't like that gel. And my follow up is usually, well, why? What's it made of? There's got to be something in it that we can trace it back to. And then we can make sure that when we find you other gels, we avoid that one ingredient. So take a look at that. Take a look at your gels and say, am I getting different glucose or different sugar sources rather? Because they're all going to be absorbed differently by our body over time. And we can also increase our absorption by mixing the types of sugar over time. Because what happens is when we go online, I know it's going to happen, y'all. You're going to go online. This is a screenshot of the feed, and you're going to be like, there's so many options. Like, all I did was type in marathon nutrition, and all of this came up. You have this first images here are from liquid nutrition, so you'll be mixing it into your bottle. But you can see they have bars 17, chews 13. There's a breakfast, there's waffles, there's 53 types of gels. There are endless options for how to get your nutrition fuel. And also, what's not shown on here is just real food. So, we're going to talk through that as well. So, like I said before, there's no truly best option. That's just marketing. It's what's going to work for you. So, let's go through some of my favorite questions to find out what options work best for you. So, if you were my athlete, these are the questions I would be walking you through to help you find your nutrition for race day. First question I'm going to ask you: how long is the race? What are we training? How long are you going to be out there for? Are you going to be out there for 3 hours? Or are you out there for 6 hours? Is it a 5K? Is it a 10K? Is it an ultra marathon? How long is your race? That's going to tell me how many sources of carbs we need to look for. The second thing I'm going to look at, are you a salty sweater? There are products out there that you can buy and you put them a little patch on you and you can determine if you're a salty sweater and you can determine your sweat rate. You can determine your sodium loss weight. There's all these things that you can do to figure out, am I a salty sweater? Simplistically put, when you are done with your run, can you brush your body off and does a bunch of, white dust come off you? That tells me you're a super salty sweater. If you don't know if you're a salty sweater, you're probably not a salty sweater. The reason I ask that is because that tells me if we need to be looking for something with electrolytes, sodium, potassium, magnesium. If you're super salty, we want to make sure that we are capturing some additional electrolytes so you don't become hypotremic while you're running. The next question I'm going to ask you is a flavor profile. Do you like sweet? Do you like sour? Do you like both? What type of taste profiles do you prefer? I know me, if you were to give me a cake batter gel, I would probably puke. I hate sweet things when I'm running. All of my gels are neutral flavored. They just taste like whatever the product is. So for you, you need to find out what flavors do you like? What texture do you like? And there's no wrong answers. Like I showed you on that previous screen, there's so many options out there. Narrow it down. I like sweet. I like to have something to chew on. You can chew on. Do you want something that tastes like a gummy? You've got the Gatorade chews. Do you like something that's maybe a little more tangy? Oh, then let's go with Scratch. Scratch has great energy chews that are a little bit salt, a little bit sweet, kind of like a Sour Patch Kid. There's lots of choices out there. If you're like, no, I prefer something more real, there's bars. People make, actual bars that are high carb and they're easy to digest, but maybe you want to use that for one of your walk breaks. And then the last question I ask is, do certain foods upset your stomach when you're not running? So are there foods that you already stay away from? So if you tell me like, hey, I don't eat fruit snacks because they really bother my stomach, I get a lot of indigestion. I'm not going to recommend a chew to you because there's probably a binding agent in there that does not work well with your body. And so we're going to find something else. So going through all these questions will help me backtrack and find out what supplements or products would work best for you. Really generically speaking, I pulled together just some overview of what your strategy could look like as you're going into your race. So, someone training for a 6 hour marathon, looking at 90 grams per hour, 6 hours total, they need 540 grams of carbs for that entire duration. So, realistically speaking, they're going to need multiple sources of carbs. I love to get carbs through my bottle, carrying a handheld, or using a camelback. I love, especially for backup packers that have camelbacks that'll put their nutrition in the bladder. And then in the front flasks, they'll use those for just water. So that way you can have a palate cleanser in between. You can also use the aid stations as palate cleansers. Here, just using Tailwind, there's also a product called Precision. There's another product, Scratch. I think the Feed has their own product. There's multiple products that you can use. Um, 8 scoops, 200 grams of carbs. This is awesome because you can also buy the individual packs, carry them with you, and then like a mad scientist at each of your aid stations, you're just mixing. Or maybe you're filling up a 2-liter bladder and putting in the appropriate amount and sipping on that throughout the race. One waffle is 19 grams of carbs. I'm saying we're going to use 3 waffles throughout the race. That's 57 grams of carbs. 6 gels sounds like a lot, but you're probably taking something in every 30 minutes or so. As a backup packer, I also recommend using some type of real food nutrition. So in this example, it's 100 grams of pretzels, which might seem a little heavy. So maybe we'll swap one of those out. But that's why you want to test all this stuff during your long runs. Hey, how much is that? How am I going to carry all this? This is a great example of how you use multiple carb sources for a 6-hour marathon. For a 4-hour marathon, obviously, we're going to need less. We might not need that 90 grams of carbs an hour. So here we've got 70 grams per hour times 4 hours. It's 280 grams total needed. We've got 4 scoops, so half the amount of Tailwind. So here, same example, maybe I'm putting those in my flasks and I'm putting water in my bladder. I've got 2 waffles instead of the 3 and only 6 gels. These are great ways to kind of adjust to how much you're going to need based on the time you plan to be on the course. And also little flavor profile changes. You took out the pretzels. Maybe you want to introduce tortilla chips. I don't know. But just simple ways that you can see that as your time changes, you will need to adjust how much fuel you're planning to take with you. There are a multitude of sources out there. This is not an end all be all. I did not include any chews on this one, but you can absolutely swap that out. So, again, what I like to do is whatever your expected finishing time is, multiply it by give or take where that carb suggestion is for the target per hour, get your total, create your math, divide it out equally so you can try to take all that in every 30 to 40 minutes. Ironically, when we're putting together this plan, I'm sure you're thinking, well, okay, Coach D, you've talked about how many carbs per hour. We talked a little bit about sodium and sweating. What are the least important considerations? Ironically, body weight is one of the least and male versus female. Are they important? Yes, but they are lower on the priority schedule than the other factors that we talked about. So start with the original numbers. Obviously, as you're practicing, if you are larger framed and you're like, I did 60 grams, that was so easy. I need more. Great. Go and take more. Now you're including body weight and you're increasing it. Caffeine, we're going to talk a little bit more about this, ironically ranks super low on the scale of considerations. I actually find that caffeine on the race course causes more GI distress than it does helpfulness in becoming more alert. So keep that in mind as you're considering adding caffeine. And then, depending on the type of sweater you are, sodium and electrolytes rank lower when you're prioritizing your nutrition for race day. Again, these factors are important, but they do rank lower than time, effort, and distance. Sodium and electrolytes are super important if your race is going to be extremely hot or unseasonably warm. Think about your summer training, and if you have a fall race and you're expecting like 80-degree temps, you may need to adjust your time on feet. Your race is probably going to be longer, but then you're also going to probably want to pump up your sodium and your electrolytes, potassium, magnesium. So keep all those points as consideration, but they're not as important. There is a product out there, Morton, that specifically claims on its website not to be used with electrolytes. I listened to a podcast trying to break that down and understand it because it didn't make any sense. Because electrolytes are important and sodium is important during your race. And I was confused on why a nutritional product was saying you should not take this with them, and it was more of their biocarbs. If you're somebody that takes Mortion, if that's a brand that you are gravitating towards and you read that on their website, please know that they are specifically talking about their biocarb product, which is like this new thing coming up. A lot of pros are playing with it, a lot of high schoolers are playing with it. Honestly, it's not as important for the most of us. If you want to dive deeper into that, I'm sure there's tons of podcasts out there. But from my professional recommendation, it is not something that most of us need to endure. And I say endure because it is not good tasting. It is really difficult to get down. It is this weird gooey substance. It doesn't taste great. Um, there's better tasting options out there to achieve the goals that most of us on this call have. So let's talk about that caffeine. So I told you that that's not a consideration. And the reason it's not really a consideration is because there are significant variations on how individuals metabolize caffeine, making it really challenging to give a one size fits all approach. I can't sit here and say you need to take, 180 milligrams, which is less than a cup of coffee, at 2 hours in, and you'll receive 5%. I can't say that. There are studies that have been done, but because everybody metabolizes it differently, it's really difficult to give a blanket recommendation. Actually using a caffeine supplement might be a better option. And the reason for that is if you are traveling and you are getting a cup of coffee from the downstairs bar that the hotel staff has laid out, that caffeine might not be the same level or strength that you are used to at home. And so by not being able to manage that dosage, you may be in overtaking or undertaking the amount of caffeine that your body is used to. So this is one of those areas where a caffeine supplement might be better. So instead of drinking a cup of coffee before you go out the door for your long run, maybe you're taking a supplement that you're going to specifically use. And so this is how supplements are designed to be used. It is to supplement, it is for a purpose. It is not for an everyday scenario. So just consider that if you are traveling for a race this fall, you may want to consider that if caffeine is vital to your pre-run routine, if you know what I'm talking about. Um, so again, effective dosages are typically 3 to 5 milligrams per kilogram of body weight taken 45 to 60 minutes before exercise, or there are caffeine gums available. So you can also just pop a piece of caffeine gum, get that same effect. So pre-run, that's something you can do. On the run, intra-run nutrition, we typically guide away from unless you're doing an extreme endurance event. We're talking ultra marathons, half Ironmans, full Ironmans. That's going to be a little bit of a different story just because you are going to need some adrenaline pump there. So the bottom line of nutrition for your marathon fueling is fuel early, fuel often. You may be taking in nutrition every 30 minutes for a marathon. And that first dose, you probably want to skip because you feel good. I know so many marathoners that get to the 30-minute and they're like, okay, I'm going to take it. I feel great, but Coach D said, and then they get to the first hour and they go, well, I still feel good. I'm going to save it. I'm going to push it 15 minutes. Don't do that. Don't push it unless you're feeling nauseous and there's other outside elements that are impacting your decision. Don't skip it because you feel great. You feel great because you didn't skip it. Same thing goes as the race progresses. If you fueled early and you fueled often, as the race progresses, if you do start to feel nauseous, if the day starts to turn, you're going to have that fuel in your system. You're going to have the options available to swap out your fuel. Maybe the idea of a honey stinger doesn't sound great at mile 15, but you have a couple chews. You can try that. What we don't want to do is just grab something on the course and be like, oh, well, I didn't train with it, but it's here. Here we go. Have your own options available, especially if you're going to be a 5 to 6 hour finisher. Fueling is not a weakness. I've heard this all the time. Fueling is like your secret power. I don't know why like people shy away and think that having all this fuel on them is something bad. Science is turning now. We are noticing fueling is actually the number one thing you can do to impact your overall positive experience on the marathon. It supersedes shoes, it supersedes clothing, it supersedes sometimes your training. Like there's no special workout that's going to set you up for a marathon, but there is special nutrition and like having that organized nutrition that works for you that will set you up for the marathon. Plan ahead for race day. Plan ahead, please. Do not wait until Friday at the expo and think you're going to go buy your gels. You're going to find that you're not. We know stuff happens and maybe your luggage got lost. If you're flying to a race, do not put your shoes, your race day kit, nothing. Do not put it in your checked luggage. Carry it on with you. I've only had one circumstance where my nutrition was taken from me at the airport. They let me keep everything except my blue powdered Gatorade. I was going to the UK and I didn't know if they would have my Gatorade there. I like to drink it before the race, so it wasn't my intra run nutrition. But lo and behold, I found out that taking blue powdered Gatorade automatically fails the explosive test. People in here that if you know chemistry, you'll know why. I did not know why, but because it's supposed to turn blue, mine already failed, and so they took that from me. But I was able to maintain all my gels and all my other nutrition. So take it with you on your carry-on so that way you are not scrounging at the expo trying to find gels. And last but not least, carbs are your friend during training. I don't know where this low carb nonsense came from. We need glycogen. I'm sure there's the no carb athlete. I'm sure they exist. Keto is not going to get you strong to the finish line. Planning your carbs, keeping the cycle going. Do not think that just because it's your long run day that you need to eat carbs and then you're trying to skip the carbs the next day. Our body also utilizes carbs as recovery. So we want to make sure that we are eating carbs on a regular basis so that during training, our body has a readily available source of carbohydrates to fuel all of our runs. Little bonus round here. I'm sure you've heard of glycogen depleted runs. I'm not sure if anybody has been told, like, oh, we should run on empty, right? We need to run on empty here. And no, we're not running on empty. That is not what we're doing. This is an old school practice before we had science that supported us saying that you should practice running on E to simulate race day. You should never get to E on race day. This is a horrible practice. It's actually going to set you up for an excellent way of being injured. Um, Coach Cody would tell you he actually had a stress reaction of his femoral head on his hip, which is a really bad, almost career ending injury, and it was because he was underfueled. He wasn't eating enough during his training cycle. And it wasn't for wanting to not eat, it was just didn't know. And so years ago, he came across his injury and he wouldn't have been in that situation had he been consuming more. Our bodies, our bones, they need calories to repair, to recover, and to perform. So please, please, please do not go out and say, I'm going to run this run on E so I can prepare for race day, because you should not be planning to be on E for race day. So I hope you've walked away with something new, some new carb takes, different ways to look at your nutrition strategy. If you are like, I don't know anything you're talking about, I'm a run coach. I have options for you. I've got nutritional strategies. I talk with clients and do one on one calls with them, and we break down what works best for them in their training strategies. We also do consultations for all distances. So if you're at a point in your training where you're like, everything I'm doing is wrong, I need to request a consultation. I want to talk through, I want to reset my plan. What do I do? We got you. You don't have to train with us to be able to do that, but we're happy to look at your training, and we're happy to look at your nutrition and help you through and feel like you have a personalized strategy for race day. We also have our Get Strong, Finish Strong, if that's something that Coach Cody talked about with you guys last time. Our next call is going to be on Tuesday, October 7th, which is going to be our course review and race prep. So that's going to be the opportunity that you guys can walk through the Marine Corps course. We're going to talk through race strategies, how you break down the course, pacing, all those things. Now I want to turn the tables over to you guys and ask, what questions do you have about getting fueled, and how can we help to answer that for you so you feel prepared for race day? Anybody have any questions? Yes, Beth, I'm going to put that in the follow-up email. So I'll make sure that Cindy has that information so we can book that for you.